All right. So check 1 2. I think we are live.
We're live.
Español en italiano en inglés. I don't know, but
Let's do a language we both don't know. Let's do Japanese.
welcome everyone to the Leapwing Audio Talks. Today we have dear friend and producer, engineer, maestro Riccardo or Ricky Damian. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, man. It's an honor to be with some of the. You had some amazing guests on this, so it's truly an honor. Thank you for having me.
Of course,
100%.
It's always like we get our friends together to hang out, and this is fun. Like we were just off camera, we were talking about like, man, it's like when we used to, like last time I think we met here in LA and we just like hang out at the studio. So this is the same with a camera in our living rooms and everyone is watching. So I hope we are not very boring to you. So we will try to make it as I think as valuable as we can. I'm not sure about entertaining. We are engineers, so bear with us.
Yeah, we're already starting on a difficult point. The topic is already quite boring for 98% of the population. So we're gonna try our best for sure.
Exactly, just for FYI. But yeah, like this basically is gonna be a 1 hour long talk where you in the comment section can ask Ricky or myself whatever question that you might have. Just to like give you a bit of a background, Ricky is Grammy winner, engineer, producer, and mixer as well.
Mm-hmm.
Has worked with people like Mark Ronson, and recently one of my favorite bands from London, Ezra Collective, that I think they're very. I think it's a musicians band, and that's something I love.
Yeah, very talented, very young as well. They're like 24. Unbelievable.
All the way from Italy, living in London for the past 8 years.
Yeah, correct. 8 years a week ago. So yeah, anniversary time.
Congratulations. And just basically we met, I think, a year like last year at Electro Lady at the AES. Mm-hmm. And I think it was through a friend, through Mo, I think that we got to meet, or like before.
Through I guess initially Jake from Strong Room.
Oh yeah, Jake.
Exactly, my good friend Jake at Strong Room, which is a great studio here in London that I go at very often. And I think Jake originally connected us maybe years ago via email, which is when I started using Leapwing plugins.
That's true.
Because Jake is the one that told me about you guys.
That is true.
And then probably through Mo we met physically, something we can't do right now. This is as good as it gets. I think it would have been AS in New York the last time.
Yeah, I remember.
And then LA a few other times. Yeah,
that's how life goes,
Mm-mm.
So to start the conversation, I would love to like hear how you took the decision or started to go into like music engineering. Did you play instruments when you were growing up? How did you from the age that you remember playing instruments to the time that you moved to London? How was that path, and what made you actually taking the decision of, okay, I have to go to London? Because I think we are kind of, I have, and I find similarities because I think we are from like small towns in north of countries that are not
exactly.
They're great for food, but maybe for recording is like not as popular, So walk us through your journey from conception to like going to England.
We are the true Latinos, the European Latinos, right? So it's funny because I think there was a little turning point in my life, which is like music has always existed in my life, like in everybody's life. But at some point it became something not just as a background, if it makes sense. But it became something way more meaningful for me. I started playing when I was 6 years old. I started playing guitar, mainly just as a recreation activity. Like my mom suggested I should play guitar because a few of my classmates were playing guitar. But bear in mind, no, my family is not musical at all. I think at the time nobody was really listening to music in the house, so I didn't grow up listening to music as an activity. I didn't grow up like appreciating music as a piece of art. It will be just the background. It will be like whatever's on the radio. If I'm in the car, it will be anything what my friends listen to. And I think for a lot of years it kept being something like that, just an activity, just something, just one other thing, on top of everything else in life. And then when I was in middle school, age 13, 14, my music teacher, which she's the reason why I'm here today. She thought, she thought I was, in a way, maybe a little talented with the instruments. I don't think I was, to be honest, but because I was playing, and normally not all kids play, she started feeding me music. She said, you might like this, you might like that. And at some point I remember she gave me a Queen greatest hits.
Oosh.
and I mean, Queen is a band that either you love or you hate.
Yeah.
There isn't a middle ground. And I remember just listening to that for the first time, and that would have been Bohemian Rhapsody, like that era, so the 70s Queen period. And I think it clicked. I was like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, whatever this is, because I'm 13 years old. I don't know. Like I didn't have internet when I was 13. I don't think I had it until I was 15. So it's not like I was Googling like how to make a record, blah, blah, blah. Like I was just, I was just listening. I was buying records. I'm probably the last of my generation, or part of the last generation that still bought record. I still had cassettes and CDs and stuff like that. And so I just got into like heavy into like 70s classic rock, British classic rock, which gives, which answers your question. The reason why I then further in my life decided to move to London is because that's where the music I always loved was made. Yeah. And that for me is a big point. I think wherever you are in the world, it doesn't matter. Like you could be the best engineer, the best producer, the best musician, but if you know the music you like, and if you know the music you want to do, to a certain extent, geographically, it really matters where you go, because it's easier to make a rock record or whatever that would be in LA as opposed to London. It's in Italy, or as you said, in northern Spain. Like there's way less of an industry. There's way less of an industry, like of a recording scenario. There's less bands. There's less facilities. So for me, it was that. And I think I got into recording. Obviously, I switched to electric guitar as soon as I understood what Brian May was. And
until then, what do you play?
Well, I used to play jazz, but not studying jazz. Like I was just like, yeah, whatever. So acoustic jazz or things that I don't even remember right now, which is really bad. I should remember that. But then, I decided I wanted to be a rock guitarist ever since I listened to Queen. Yeah. And I think because of the whole amplifier pedal world, which is really geeky, as soon as I got into a little basement studio for the first time at age 15, 16, I just fell in love with it. I was like, in Treviso, my hometown. Because I had a Pink Floyd tribute band at the time. We were playing The Wall, and I thought it would be a very easy thing to do to just go to a studio and record our version of The Wall, like not like completely not thinking how difficult it is to even re-record, even remotely re-record and match those sounds.
I love how when we are young, we are like just reckless.
We think we can do anything, but that's beautiful. I think that's beautiful. And so that's huh?
How was that experience? Like, how was it? How long was it? What did you experience? Like,
I think we never finished it because it was never even good. We weren't good. We were kids. We were playing The Wall in theaters for charity. It was really fun as an activity, but as soon as you're put at the test in front of a microphone, that's where you really know if you're good or not. But on the flip side, I loved whatever the studio was. And bear in mind, that was a small basement with like a bunch of 57s, Cubase 3, small speakers, 2 microphone preamp, basic, very basic, no Neves, no Neumanns, no nothing. But the idea of being able to capture, manipulate, work on overdub, stack, all these things, mixing, like the infinite possibility of sound manipulation for me was just like so attractive. And I think at age 16, I knew that's it. That's what I wanted to do. I sort of like flipped and went on the other side of the glass. I thought that was kind of like my thing. And by age 17, I already knew I wanted to move to London and attend SAE, which is the school I actually did. Mainly because that was the most advertised school at the time. Yeah. I didn't know about most things. I mean, I was a kid from Italy, from a small town in Italy. So, but I had my ideas, my mind was very clear at the time. And I was like, as soon as I finish high school and I graduate, I'm just going to go. And so I did. When I was 19, I moved here and
Wow.
kind of never made it back.
And was this the first time? Like, did you move to London before visiting London before? Meaning, like,
I,
when it was the first time?
I had visited London in 2008, so 4 years before I moved.
Mhm.
Fell in love with it. I mean, London is, to me, London is the best city in the world.
To start, like
Best city in the world. There's other beautiful cities in the world. I have not seen all cities in the world, so in my opinion, so far, London is the
let's call metropolis, or like
yeah,
like
yeah, exactly. And so I knew that also. Obviously, I should have mentioned. Yeah, I knew the city before, but the whole thing for me was like, yeah, that's the place I want to be. Because this, for a European going to the States is not easy. You really need to have a lot of money and a lot of luck. We're talking visa, we're talking, schools are way more expensive, life is more expensive. That was not a thing. And also, I mean,
this, like, fully decided to like live in London. And and here's the straight up answer: it's too rainy. Like,
I get it.
and London, and at some point I would like to live in London because, well, it's London. But I have to say that I base my, like, the first time I came to LA in 2014, I was like, man, this is my, at least my place,
Yeah, no, and I get it. Get it.
I always, in the back of my mind, I always have, like, when I'm gonna live in London. When do I'm gonna live in London? Like, this question, like, at some point I have to live in London. I don't know when it's gonna happen. At some point,
I think everyone should do it at least once in their lifetime, because that's the thing. Obviously, it's very personal, and I love seasons.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, including my girlfriend, for example, hates seasons. She loves the sun, so she loves Los Angeles for that. She's Brazilian, so she was born and raised under the sun, if it makes sense. For me, Treviso, northern Italy, it's very seasonal. It gets really cold in winter, like -5 Celsius. Sometimes it snows, very close to the mountains. So I appreciate, also, I have to say, creatively, I appreciate seasons. I appreciate,
why
change of settings. That's the thing about LA. I spent probably the majority of 2018 and 2019 in Los Angeles without ever moving there, just being there for work. But I love it. There's certain things I really love, but I think the sun goes for granted after a while, and it's not that special anymore. I know it sounds mental to say, I'm sorry, but yeah, I like to have a rainy day every now and then. I know here is way rainier than everywhere else, but
I find very interesting what you say, that from a creativity point of view, that enforces your inspiration.
Yeah, and I have to say, it really makes sense that the music that was written here sounds like this to me. Like, I don't think, exaggeration here, I don't think Pink Floyd would have wrote The Wall in California, and I don't think Tom Petty would have done any record that he has done in London, in the sense that like they sound like the place they were made, if it makes sense. I don't know if, to me, that's how it is.
That is so true. And yeah, you breathe the air where you are, and we have the first questions from Giovanni. Thank you, Giovanni, for being here with us. Says, Ricky, what would you suggest to someone? Actually, I can put this in the screen.
Oh, there you go. Wow.
To someone who works 9 to 5 and also does mix engineering as a second gig, to start doing it mixing seriously, will I need to go through the usual internet assistant route? Great question.
Very good question. I think any question like this, which considers the usual path of engineering and production, is probably, I can't answer any of that question because of COVID, in the sense that I think we have to rewrite the books right now, because everything has changed. I mean, I've been talking with a lot of friends, musicians, engineers, producers, and everyone agrees with, and we were saying this earlier off camera, that we're in a way restarting the machine from scratch. So if this question was asked to me before quarantine, I would say mixing is in general something that I think personally you can learn from someone, but you can't really teach it. So finding somebody that you can learn mixing from, so assisting a mixer or assisting an engineer that mixes or producer that mixes, is definitely great to acquire more skills and knowledge and familiarity with the art. I don't think necessarily that we're in an age where you need to apply for a assistant job at a studio and be there 4 or 5 years and become an engineer. I think, music, everybody's making music in their bedrooms, not only in their bedroom, but also in their bedroom. So I think there's so many levels of music making, and therefore there's so many levels of music mixing and engineering. So there always will be a place for any stage. Mm-hmm. And I think that is in a way more democratic than it used to be back in the day, maybe when even technology was different. So I think the only solution to getting better at mixing and getting more clients is mixing. And I know obviously that's challenging with a 9 to 5, and there's no such a thing as being able to mix after you're really tired or really, your ears are very tired. But I think, I don't know if that sounds like a stupid answer, but I feel like the best thing is just keep mixing. I personally, I learned to mix way better just by mixing. For example, in quarantine, I was forced to mix because that's the only thing I could do, and meaning I couldn't record, which is what I like to do the most. And so I became a better mixer, I think, by mixing.
That is
it makes sense.
I think it's a great answer. What's something you touched on that I would like to emphasize, which is first, there's no rules almost anymore, and now we can, and I think especially when we do these kind of talks, a lot of let's say, we are not old, but younger generation than us, early 20s, they I think because of internet on videos or something, they still are in this idea of oh, but I can't get an internship, but I can get this and that. It's yes, but realize that now it's way more democratic. Right now, you have the same tools as I have here in LA. Mm-hmm. The only question is what do you do with it, and how do you we have the luxury of learning from really good people and having the experiences and so on. Yes, that is true. But when you were saying that you didn't grab until you were 15 with internet, I think I had internet when I was 16, something like that as well. We didn't have YouTube. We didn't have this thing. We didn't have there was no plugins.
There was no mix with the masters. There was no pure mix, just to be exactly. Democratic there. But
no mix with the masters. No, especially no for example, AES online. That now you have AES online. You have a master class. You can learn from Carlos Santana. That is just
is amazing. That is pretty amazing. Yeah,
that is bonkers. So
yeah.
As well, in the flip side, yes, there's maybe way less opportunities for studios, but the opportunities of learning from, Tom Elmhurst. I think one of the most talented engineers out there.
100%.
I think we have to sometimes take a perspective and the fact that we in our houses, we have the tools needed to make a record. When I'm sure when you did the wall version, the first time I came to in a small studio in north of Spain, it was very expensive to even being able to capture anything. I'm not saying capture in a good way.
Just just capture it.
Just capture I don't know. I can't remember the first interfaces, but I think the first things I was using was Pro Tools 888. This yellow.
I had 5. I had Pro Tools 5.
That sounded terrible, and
yeah, and it was expensive. It wasn't easy to get your hands on something like that,
and it was bad.
It was bad. Yeah.
Well, it was not great, but you show me now your Antelope interface. Would you say 32 channel or something?
Unbelievable. 32 IO 20 years ago. Well, I wasn't doing it 20 years ago. Hang on, 10 years ago, 10, 12 years ago. Yeah,
but you can in your backpack get that. Go to the studio with your laptop. You have a excellent recording that no one can.
Yeah, easy. You pack in your laptop. Your laptop, an Apollo or whatever 2-track interface. I think, and a SM7 or anything like that, and you're good. pair of headphones or a pair of IK multimedia tiny speakers. Like, for example, like I just recently, actually, I went back home for a month, and the singer of my band owns like a barn in the middle of nothing in Emilia Romagna.
Instagram. Yeah.
And so my band, meaning there's 4 musicians and me, and the 4 musicians are the guys that play, write the songs, and I produce, engineer, mix, and help writing the song. I do play occasionally, but they are the guy that plays. I am the guy that makes it happen. So for years they've been going there every summer, just jamming and writing, and I've always been too busy just working. But this year everything stopped, so I was like, you know what? This year I'll join you, and I'll, it's not a studio or anything, but it's all made of stone and wood, and it's a beautiful room. Let's just go there and make anything. Let's make a few songs, let's make a record, whatever we can do. And so I packed most of my gear here, put it in a pelly case, flew there, took all my mics, and it's so easy to do now. It's so again, going back to what you were saying, I think it's really way more democratic and way more what do you say, democratic and accessible for us to make stuff that sounds great. And again, we're just talking about tools. Like, it doesn't matter. You need a song, you need the musicians, you need the ideas and the creativity to make it happen. You could be on an M-Box with stock Pro Tools plugins. You could have everything in the world. It wouldn't make a difference. Obviously, certain things help. And through experience and work and, taste, you get bits of equipment that sound better than others and things that work better for you. Yeah. But in general, I wouldn't trade it back for what we had maybe 10 years ago. I even think about the plugin world 10 years ago. I don't think, that there wasn't a lot of the. I am a big fan of utility plugins. I know it sounds very boring because everybody's like, oh, the Fairchild, the Pultec, and this. I love plugins that, I love, for example, I mean, I'm not doing this on purpose, but a lot of the concepts behind Leapwing Audio is doing something that is so useful and so and just fixes things or helps. Yeah. For example, being able to move things with depth and width, or obviously the Dyne 3 is amazing because I just run anything through it and it sounds better. So it's a better maker in a way. Exactly. But I'm a big fan of those things, and I don't think 10 years ago we had those facilities, or not a lot of it.
Not much.
There's so much nowadays that is great, and it kind of compensates for maybe the lower quality recordings that we get every now and then. So we're in a world where it's very easy.
If you remember the first versions of guitar simulation plugins.
Oh yes. Mosquito sounds.
Mosquito sounds and latency. You will play a note, go to get a coffee, and then you know what I mean. So much latency. And now, I love how especially now I use the UAD guitar plugins.
Yeah, they're great.
They're great. But Moise Piano says she should be a mix with the masters. So mix with the masters. Take note, get Ricky.
I would love to be on Mix with the Masters, although I don't think I am as good as anybody else on the roster.
Come on. Okay, so there is another question from Moise. What are the qualities of a good mix? What are the most common mistakes in mixing? Great question.
Very, very interesting question. Let's start from the fact that it's very personal. Mixing is very personal. Like recording, like anything of what our job is, in my opinion, is personal. I don't know how you hear things, and you don't know how I hear things, so we can all hear things differently. So let's start from that, which is already a little difficult. But I think, let's start from the negative point. Let's start. What are the common mistakes in mixing? Meaning, as a mixer, mixing too loud, mixing without a reference. Those would probably be the two biggest mistakes at any level. I think at any level, your ears, you can wake up one morning and your ears sound different because of the fluids in your head. It happens to me every time. So
maybe, when you fly.
Especially when I fly. When you drink too much coffee, when you don't drink enough coffee, when you drink alcohol, when you don't drink alcohol, our body is a perfect machine, but it's also very variable. So I think it's very important to have a workflow. It's very important to have a template, to have a way where you can basically rule out all the things that could go wrong, make sure that you can do the best you can. So obviously, making sure you don't sacrifice your ears by listening too loud, making sure that you have, again, a template, or your routing is fine and everything, and making sure that you use references, so you actually are not just mixing for the sake of it, but you are trying to help the song to be what the artist wants it to be, or what the producer wants it to be, within the context of the music they make. Which doesn't mean that you always have to care about it. Like, I'm a big fan of saying, just do your thing. If you are a creative person and you have your own sound, by all means, that's the path you should follow. But as a rule of thumb, I know it's important to try and listen to what the artist and the producer want to say, and it's our job to enhance it and to make it, especially from the emotional content, to make it even more prominent. Like, if there is a certain feeling, a certain mood that the artist and the producer are trying to capture and are trying to communicate, work on that, try and understand that from the beginning of your mix, so you're always going to keep that in mind. And what are the qualities of a good mix? I think this is what a good mix can be. I think there's a book, it would probably is one of those Zen and the Art of Mixing, like the Mixerman things, which are books that are really fun to read and really cool, actually. And I think he says at some point, if everybody loves the mix and nobody has a comment or a note or a complaint, it means the mix is shit. And that kind of makes sense, because I feel like you need, if everybody approves the mix at your first pass, they either don't know what they want, or I mean, it's hardly ever the case that you do something that is beyond their expectations. Hopefully they are really focused on what they on what they want. But in a way, that's a metaphor to say that the mix is way more important and way more. And by the way, if we listen to what are the best sounding records or the most emotional records ever made in every genres, those are the records where you can listen beyond the technicals. You can listen beyond the speakers. You're not hearing a mix, you're hearing a song. Yeah. So I guess what makes a good mix, sorry for a very long path to get to this answer, but what makes a good mix is when you can't hear the mix. I think that I could sum it up into that. Yeah. Which is very hard. It's not easy all the time. There's a lot of variables into that, but I think that will be the final answer.
That's a great answer. Thank you, Ricky. It says Giovanni, thank you. Was a great answer. And Giovanni has more than a question, a point. I think it says, I think the democratization of the music process is great. The other side of the coin is finding the best way to make connections with people in the industry if you only work from home as I do. That is definitely the case.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what's your take on that, but I would say, like, of course we are living in these times, but if we moving forward, I would say, like, the best thing is to, like, find where your gang is living, like what you wanted to bridge music, and go there, like, go
find the scene. Exactly.
The bands.
Yeah, it's a difficult time now, and I obviously totally understand that it's an inappropriate time to suggest this, but every city, every place, everywhere where music is made has a scene or multiple scenes. Yeah. And I think, as old school as it sounds, as soon as you're part of that scene, that's when everything starts to sort of like happen in a way, because you mix somebody's record and they like it so much they're going to tell their friends. Like, I don't, it sounds very old school, it sounds pre-internet era, but in a way I think that still works, because again, the having a very democratic way of making music means that, like, anyone, my grandma could take a laptop and say, I'm a mixing engineer, and posting something on SoundCloud or SoundBetter or whatever those websites are, like, hey, yeah, 100 whatever, 100, 200, 300 for a mix, done. There's a lot of that. There's like mastering for $10 a song. Like, there's a lot of that. But I think what really makes the difference is also, being unique. Try and do your thing without too much preconception, without thinking about it. Just being yourself, doing your thing, and trying to insert yourself in a scene that is what you want to be part of ultimately.
How was that process for you when you moved to London, when you started to work in London? How did you, like, put your foot in the door?
So I came here and started studying straight away at SAE. and basically, I was so eager and just anything audio. I would use the studio so much that I would sleep there.
Wow.
Every now and then go home and not every now and then, try and do every day. Go home, shower, and then come back. Like every hour that wasn't booked in a studio, I would book it, because there's an SSL Plus, there's an EVR, there's a bunch of other consoles. Like I want to know every millimeter of everything, because I'm paying so much and I'm making such a big sacrifice to be here. So I might as well just use it. And I think part of that, it's not, for me, was not only using the equipment, but also trying to get to know the people, the teachers, the supervisors, everybody that made, that was relevant in that, because that was my scene. The school becomes your scene when you're there. And so, I would stay after lectures and talk to lecturers and be like, can I know more about this? Can you explain? Like, as an annoying kid, that's exactly what I was. But then also, like, if there's anything I can do, if I can help assist sessions, whatever it is, like trying to get somewhere to do more, because I was never happy with it. I was never satisfied. And so eventually I think a few things happened where I started assisting friends of friends, or helping out, maybe building studios or wiring things, because I also really like the technical side of it. And to date, I've built many studios, and it's something that I really like to do. It's really fun, including my own place, which I was forced to do through lockdown. But eventually, after one thing led to another, and then I started assisting at Red Bull Studios back in Tower Bridge when it was still over there. Now it's somewhere else in central London, I think. And I think that, plus a few other things, and then right at the end of my course is when I started working for Mark Ronson. It was like a crossfade. So I was finishing studying and I started working for him, because he had just opened a studio in London, and he was looking for a young engineer that had a lot of analog knowledge, and especially tape machine knowledge. And I was the only one in my course that knew even what a tape machine was.
Wow.
Because I don't think
at the school, or that was your own.
So before moving to London, I started assisting a bigger studio in Treviso, my hometown, and they used a lot of analog gear and tape. So that's where I really learned how to do it. And then obviously at school they teach you, but you never get to use it. They teach you on paper what it does, and all the technical aspects of it. But I was really the only kid that knew how to do it. So that's why I got the job.
Wow.
And so basically that's how I started, and then worked with Mark very closely from 2014 all the way to 2016 pretty much, which is when in London. In London. And then at the end of 2016, Mark moved to Los Angeles, and so I stayed in London and it kind of like went freelance. I started working a little bit on the live side as well. I was programming tours and doing like playback and production live. And I did a lot of work with Craig David. I did a lot of work with Sam Smith, and in the touring side, while at the same time I was making records with as a freelance, Georgia Smith, with Sampha, with Jay Watson, who's the for example the keyboard player of Tame Impala. So things that I would have, people that I would have met through Mark, but also people local in the scene in London, like Georgia and Sampha, for example. And so from 2017 onwards, I've been a freelance engineer, still working a lot with Mark in the US, especially because I think from end of 2017, I started traveling a lot because we were basically jumping between London, Los Angeles, and New York on various projects. So that's literally, it's been a train that hasn't stopped up until COVID, where I guess the train stopped for everyone. But yeah, it's been actually crazy. It's been like 60 flights every year, like very, very, very busy schedules, and a lot of work. And I was always very lucky to be part of such amazing projects. Mark's records, and first and foremost, we did Uptown Specials in 2015, then Late Night Feelings recently, just a few years ago. Worked a lot with this amazing artist called Yeba in New York at Electric Lady, which is where we met. And that's such a beautiful place. I spent a lot of time there in the last few years.
It's a great studio.
It's it's your old house, my old house for a bit.
It's a great house. That is for sure. For me, like Electric Lady Studio A and C is one of the most vibey places
Oh yeah,
on earth to make music. You know.
yeah. And also I have to say the people. For me, that place is all about the people. You
Yeah.
know, you, all the assistants and engineers over there, like Zach, Carl, Matt, Brandon, Joe, and then obviously other people that would come in and out that I really admire, like Beatrice, for example, another Hispanic, Spaniard, whatever whatever names.
Exactly.
A lot of obviously Tom Elmers,
Yeah.
which I admire. Huh?
A lot of talent in
A
one.
lot of talent, a lot of talent. Yeah, and obviously, you know, the king of them all, Lee,
Yeah.
who's been running, who's been running the building forever, and he's the reason why that building works so well, and that the staff is amazing, and it's like such a temple of music. He's the absolute reason for that.
Yeah, it's a temple of music. And from working in London to being more, let's say, more busy or spending more time in the US, especially Los Angeles and New York, like, have you developed any insights of like what things are different or what makes every place unique, and what do you like and dislike of every place? Because I think that's
Yeah. Especially, I feel like, I mean, for me, I was just thrown into the cities. When it was LA, I was just thrown there, and I spent there months at a time. And then the same happened with New York. You know, I initially visited those cities maybe quickly, not for vacation, still for work, but like for little trips
Yeah.
where you know, you're like you don't have any orientation, you don't know where everything is, and you don't really get an idea of the song, especially when there are cities.
yeah.
You don't get an idea of the cities, especially when they're that big. I mean, LA is probably way bigger than New York from that point of view, because it's so that's something I find really difficult. Being a European Italian tiny village guy, it's very difficult for me sometimes to live in a city that is so big and spread and just open, you know, and it never ends. So I think that was my biggest clash with the US, because London is big, but it still has the European feel where kind of every road brings you to the city center.
Yeah.
And in a way, you always know where you are, which I love. That's what I love about London. It's like I could walk everywhere from here. Not necessarily, it wouldn't take me short time to go, you know, to the center, to like Soho or whatever, but I would know how to get there. Whereas I struggle like that in New York or LA.
Try to go to walking.
It's like, yeah, sure. Let's like, I'm gonna try and just hope that I'm walking toward the right direction, because otherwise, you know.
I like a
So that for sure. But and obviously, you know, similarly to what I was saying at the beginning, for London, every city has its own vibe and its own scene and its own, like, the air you breathe, the weather, the food, the, you know, everything is part of the sound, and everything is part of why certain people make certain, you know, certain music. And I love that. I really love that. I really love to see it, if, you know, to even see it as a spectator, if it makes sense. I really love that.
I think having the opportunities to experience all those major cities. I mean, we are talking the last 60, like the recording history has happened between London, New York, and LA. I mean, yeah, you
And
have
Nashville, I guess.
again.
And Nashville, maybe that's the other big city for him. Yeah.
Philadelphia as well, that had a lot of history back then. Detroit, you know, all that kind of stuff. But being able to like jump in between temples of music, I think is and of course every city like Rio de Janeiro has amazing music.
Yeah.
Melbourne has but for what I think we our experience of this kind of music, I mean, we're growing up with the Beatles. I mean, for me, Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd are like the best of.
100%.
Like Jimmy Page, I think, is not from this planet, but that's for another conversation. And then, like, you know, I mean, for me, it was the US. For me, it's Brian Wilson, Beach Boys, like this '60s production of LA. That for me, when I first, what happened to you with Bohemian Rhapsody, for me, happened with basically with Pet Sounds of the Beach Boys.
Wow, yeah, beautiful.
Which you hear is like, okay, first of all, this was like, I think it was 1964 or 67. Wait, how?
67 is Sgt. Pepper, right? So we're talking the same.
Yeah,
right,
like
yeah.
somewhere there. And it's like,
Yeah.
wait, how did they? how? Like,
Yeah, I can't imagine what it would have been to see those albums being released. Honestly, I grew up thinking that I wish I was born in 1950, like right
yeah,
in 1950.
to like
I
go to
think.
Western studios and seeing like Brian Wilson like doing like all this overdubs. Anyway, I think that's in another life maybe. But we have more questions here. That's
Hmm.
I'm going to release an acoustic string and piano project. Besides Leapwing, what are some of the best plugins to mix acoustic strings, and what advice do you give on mixing acoustic strings and piano?
Well,
Gonna get
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Well, starting from the fact that I'm not really experienced with acoustic strings, meaning I don't get to. I love them. I love the way they sound, and I love what they do to music. I think they add a level of depth and maturity to music that only strings can do. I am not super experienced with mixing them, or especially when they are such big participants.
Mhm.
I would say, because of like rationally thinking, uh, I it's a hard question, because it all depends on what the composition is. I don't Again, what we were saying before, everything is a tool. What matters is not the plugin you use, is the way you use it. So a generic way I would approach something like that would be with something that is very surgical. And classical music for me, I don't know if it's classical or not, but I'm saying in general, very acoustic classical ensembles, I approach them very surgically. So I would have FabFilter Pro Q3 as my choice in terms of EQing.
Tools or transparent tools.
Exactly, transparent, or things that really just help me craft and carve the things that I need to do. Because I obviously think, if you're talking about live piano and live strings, you would have spent a lot of time recording them in a certain way, because those are instruments that you can really capture a beautiful emotional sound just with the recording. So I think the things that you would need to do in a mixing scenario is just polishing, it's
Yeah.
containing dynamics, is enhancing dynamics if it's needed, expanding depth and dimensions, and creating illusions with reverbs. So I feel like I wouldn't have a plugin in particular. What I would use is definitely for EQing, transparency, and control is FabFilter Pro Q3, because it's a dynamic EQ. It helps with resonances. It helps with carving little things that you want to get rid of and things like that. General compression for those kind of dynamics, obviously I wouldn't overdo. I think the beauty of that music is dynamics, so I would have something very transparent that keeps it all together. If you want it to be maybe a little bit more old school, or a little bit more emulating something old, Fairchild, as opposed to two LA2As in stereo or things like that, very tubey. If that was not the case, then anything works at that point, whatever sounds good. Definitely a lot of reverbs, things that sound really nice. So like a Bricasti M7, I think there is a plugin for it. Emulation of Lexicon 480s or plates, or Valhalla Vintage Verb is beautiful. And definitely, if we want to mention Leapwing, obviously the stage one, I think, could be vital for something like this. I use it a lot to just enhance dimensions and depth and width. Obviously you have two instruments, you have strings and piano, there's nothing else. Exactly. So if you need to create space, sometimes you actually need to reduce space, but if you need to create space, that would be a tool that I would totally use for that.
Very, very helpful. And now we have like 15 minutes left, so if anyone has more questions for Ricky, please let us know in the comment box. I think I find this talk very, very interesting as well, for oneself's journey, because we were talking before that right now we are kind of in an open canvas. So I would love to hear in the next year what's things that you would like to experience, do, where would you like to go, and what things come to your mind to say, like, oh, I want to try this, as you were saying about making more music. Like, what's next for you, or what would you like to do next?
Well, we were talking about that a lot. Obviously, we're in a situation where we we had to like put a break on everything, stop and reconsider a lot of things in life. I think, and in the process of building my studio at home and things like that, I definitely want to maybe, like not necessarily only produce or only mix, but try and mix and produce more,
Mhm.
because I've been just mainly busy recording, which I love. It's the thing I love the most. But I think, slowly buying gear here and there, like finding things that I really liked and accumulating equipment that I can now have all in the same room, really gave me the feeling of, try and connect all these dots and just start, building something. And so it gives me a sort of like a creative impulse to just, it sounds boring, but like start using the things that I've been collecting, start, bringing people in, to, obviously, if we're allowed to.
Yeah.
Start bringing people in, whether it's my band or other people that I work with, and just start things, just jam, make things happen, like do the things that I wouldn't have time to do on a very busy schedule, even just experiment. I've always been a big fan of experimenting with things, which it's wrong to say that should be done just for the sake of it. Like experimentation for the sake of it doesn't bring to any result, in my opinion. It always should be done within a context. Like I'm not gonna spend 4 hours on my Juno 106 just trying all the different possibilities of the slide. It's just, okay, I set myself with a goal. I want to create 4 great patches on a specific genre or whatever, something like that. Like I want to take my 808, the boutique 808 that I have, and actually sit in front of it and learn every function, but not just learning it reading a manual, but learn it in a way that I can make use of it in the future, if it makes sense. So I think, I see, for example, you have an Ableton Push right there.
Amazing. Which I have to say, like I moved. I use only Pro Tools for like recording, multi-track recording or mixing, which I haven't done any multi-track recording in the last.
Yeah.
So this is such a creative machine, I have to say.
So I bought one in April, right at the peak of. Yeah. I bought one because I was like, that's it. It's been years that I've seen this. It's been years that I've seen Ableton. I've owned it because I bought it. I have everything, and I never sat down and used it. And then what happened is that I kept mixing, and I mixed 5 records, and I didn't really use it. But again, things will be a little slower now after the summer. I think I took some time off as well because I needed it. I needed, I think all of us had time to reflect and be with their loved ones and see their family. Some people were obviously not as lucky as maybe I was, that I could go back home. Like you told me you didn't go home, for example. So I feel like that is definitely something I want to do, is just take the time to appreciate life a little bit more. But from a creative and musical point of view, definitely like get a little bit out of that comfort zone, which is what makes you actually step forward in your, not necessarily just in your career, just in your personal knowledge and personal path. Like get to know that Ableton is just an example, but get to know another software, get to know something that you wouldn't be comfortable with, but you might be comfortable with if after a couple of hours, after a couple of days, weeks, whatever it is. I think things like that. Obviously, again, I sort of started doing this because I love, like, my ultimate goal when I was a kid and I decided I wanted to do this was to be Nigel Godrich. I wanted to be the guy that works with a band like Radiohead, you know what I mean? That spends months in a basement or in a room, whatever it is, with a band. So with other people, I love the interaction between people. I love seeing the synergy and the magic happening when you put certain very creative and amazing people in the same room.
Yeah.
So that is my goal ultimately in life, is to be able to acquire enough knowledge and creativity and skills and knowing the right people to be able to insert myself into this. And I've met some amazing people along the way, so I am doing this to a certain extent, but the more I can do, the better, because that's really what makes me, they say make your passion your job and you're never going to work again, in your life. And that is the kind of scenario that for me really makes me feel like I'm not working. Which doesn't mean I don't love mixing, doesn't mean I don't love recording, it doesn't mean I don't love working for other people. But in general, as we were talking about this, it's like the fact that after a lot of years of work, you said, no, I'm just going to start writing music because that's what I feel like. It's like there's a need in every one of us to just say something and to experiment with it and to see what happens. It might be terrible, like I'm not necessarily a songwriter. I don't sit down and write songs on a daily basis. But I mean, who knows,
Exactly, like there's no limits. And something you touch a bit, and before we go, I would love to know is like, now that you have your let's say your studio as your own creative tool, like, do you have any I don't want to say habits or any schedule, but do you do you how do you start if you feel like creative? Do you just sit down on the piano or the synth to start bringing ideas? Are you more like, oh, let me sit with a guitar, or like it's whatever feels that day, it's what you do? How do you connect with your studio?
I think the way I've done it, and obviously, I wouldn't say I'm OCD, but I am very OCD. So I spent a lot of time being like, do I want it like this? Do I want it like that? And in within the years of working in a lot of amazing studios and building a lot of studios, I sort of like found the things that I really like about certain of them and just put it all together in a plan. And so what I did in my room here is that it's all live. So every instrument I have, whether it's the Kemper for my guitars or the little synths like the OP1, the 808, or the June, like everything is all thanks to my amazing interface, the Goliath, which has so many DI inputs, for example. So everything is normaled, and with a button here on my monitor controller, I can just open it all up.
Yeah.
So that already, I think a lot of going to on a slight diversion here, but a lot of the engineering skills, I think, in the studio as an engineer, especially as a recording engineer, is to make sure that you are preserving the art of recording and the art of capturing something, but you're making sure that the technology doesn't get in the way of the creativity.
So true.
I think it's a very important point, and that applies to mixing as well. That's why having a template makes sense, is because you don't have to waste your time patching. You don't have to waste your time routing things. Yeah. When you have an idea and you want to get to it, the quickest you can do it, the better. And so in a way, I sort of made this room like that, where, if I get any sort of idea, I don't really have to think about it. I don't have to be like, I need to plug the guitar here, patch it, blah, blah, blah. It's like, boom, it's open,
Yeah.
And I think that really helps creativity in general. I've seen this on myself and on a lot of other people. So I guess that is my workflow.
Like, since you build a room to now, like, did you have any chance to bring in artists in with the condition that we are, and did you perception of the studio get reinforced or adapt by other artists' needs? Is that something that is like a dynamic thing, or you are very like basically, okay, this is how it is, and most of the artists you work with, they kind of live in that space as well? I don't know if that question makes sense.
No, it makes sense. I think because throughout the past years, I've always built studios for other people, or built studios that I work at for other people.
Yeah.
I always have in mind the fact that I'm not the single user of this space. Yeah. So even my perspective at this point was to build it so this can be, again, a toy room, a hub, anything for the people I work with.
Yeah.
And so obviously when we were in lockdown, I couldn't do it, but as soon as social interaction was possible, I started bringing like some engineer friends, some assistant friends, like people that know about this, just to get their take. I'll be like, tell me what you think. If you have any ideas, like I want to know what your like spontaneous thoughts on this studio are, whether it's technical or aesthetical. Tell me everything. I want to know, because I love to get the input of other people.
Yeah.
And so I did. And then just recently I started having bringing actually clients in. I had Georgia Smith is an artist I really work with a lot, and she just came here to record some vocals, and she's the first one that actually comes in to properly record. And we did some vocals, and she loved it. She loved the vibe. I love the fact that it works. There's space. There's no compromise in audio. Yeah. I have the gear to make it happen. I have my Tube Tech, my Neve. I have Flea 47. She has her own mic that she brought, and it went so well that she left her mic here, and she said, "You know what? That's it. I love it. I'm gonna come back here to record vocals when I need to." So that was a very important thing for me, because it means that it's very possible for music to happen in this room, which is not usually the case. As a home studio, Sometimes it feels weird. Sometimes it's too tiny. Sometimes the room is too small. I have natural light, which helps a lot. So I'm lucky in this instance. And my neighbors don't complain. I don't know what it is. Nobody has ever complained. So I'm really lucky from that point of view.
That's always a good point, man.
Yeah.
I think we are almost done. So if anyone has any more questions for Ricky, let us know in the comments. Cleon says hi from Trinidad. Nice. Well,
Very nice.
That's very like.
Oh, I love this one that it says opinion on GAS, gear addiction syndrome. No opinions. That's it. You have to deal with it.
Leave it.
It's just do it. Just we can't help it. So just keep doing it. It's tax return money, so that's fine.
That's
put in your tax and
new gear, right?
Well, I mean, vintage gear is even better, but
for tax return, like
no, you can buy used as well. You can buy on Reverb, and you get an invoice from Reverb, and that's still count. In the UK, I don't know. I don't want to take responsibility for what. But yeah, I definitely otherwise I wouldn't buy vintage mics all the time because I have a fetishism for it. No, you don't say that. You say I have a fetish for vintage mics.
Can you give us a quick tour of your studio before we wrap up?
Well, I'm a little tied because I'm plugged to a cable for speedy internet. But on this side, it's my DX7 and my Juno 106.
I love it.
They're amazing. At the back, there's my guitars and my sort of like storage with the mics and everything. It's boring shit. Let me see.
A window. That's so important.
There's a window. Yeah, 1 second. So there's a window there.
Nice.
And here's my workstation where I have an external screen. I'm using my laptop right now.
Yeah.
So you can see I have my Neve, my GML pre, my Goliath there in the center, and my Tube Tech on the other side. I don't know if you can really see that.
Yeah.
My Neumann speakers, which are amazing. I love those speakers. I'm soon getting ATCs as well. And over there on the other side, I have my little toys. Patch bass, and then the OP1, the 808, the boutique 808, the boutique Jupiter.
How do you like those Roland small units?
They're really fun. I have to say, there's always something I don't know about them because there's like menus and sub menus that you sort of have to dig in to that I haven't had the time to learn. So I might be able to do the basic stuff, but again, I want to know more about them. But they're really fun. They just sound really good as well. And also because I'm OCD, I've wired the whole studio MIDI as well. Okay. So I can play any keyboard from any keyboard, if it makes sense. So from the DX7, I can play the Jupiter and just route the MIDI through the computer.
Yeah.
So that's really helpful for me. And then obviously, the most important thing, the couch. Couch there. And
we have to talk about the coffee because
it's important.
That's very important.
I have my Mocha Bialetti in the kitchen, and that's a very, very important start of the day and start of the session.
Exactly.
Yeah,
sure, like that.
Plenty of mugs, great mugs that remind me the good places.
Lady doesn't have a mug, no? They don't have.
Of what?
Electric Lady. Do they have mugs?
I don't think so. Because I think I would have it because I would have corrupted, persuaded somebody to give me one. I think that there's T-shirts, there's vinyl mats.
And do you see the jacket?
Oh, the jacket is really nice, actually. Yeah. I was very tempted to get one because they launched it a few months ago, I think.
Like not long ago, maybe like even last month. I can't remember.
Something like that. Yeah, I was very, very tempted to get one, but I'll get it in real life one day.
Exactly. Well, we reached the 1 hour. So, Ricky, man, thanks a lot for being
my pleasure
with me and with us. Man, can't wait to hang out with you either in New York, London,
hopefully soon.
London.
And, everyone help this world, please, to get rid of this virus so we can be social again.
So be thoughtful of each other, take care of each other, stay healthy, and
keep making music.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Ricky, for your time and for your wisdom. I learned a lot during this talk. And to everyone watching, thanks again for tuning in, and we hope to see you soon in another Leapwing Audio Talk. Okay, you take care. Ciao, guys.